listening to the Adventuring Party for the first week of December 2021. This week, another dive into the Tome of Gygax, where we learn what werewolves, alignment languages, and gemstone values have to do with each other. The answer, they come in that order in these pages. The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way. Welcome to the party. I am Warlord Scarr, here once again to tussle with the mighty hosts of Gygax.
And I'm Savage Mick, here once again to provide a sort of animated bewilderment.
And, big up some random IPA from the middle of nowhere, Ireland.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes. Although, didn't get to do any serious shopping this week, so the Sierra Nevada range is getting a trotting out while we discuss another import from the US of A. We of course are back for another Tome of Gygax, Dungeon Master's Guide edition.
Yeah.
Where were we?
We were on page 21 with the kobold bullying with the dragon bullying kobolds. Like, the kobolds are attempting to bully the dragon, but they're...
No. That thing is fighting for its life. It knows it's in the presence of some of the meanest hombres in all of D&D, a pack of well-oiled kobolds. Phrasing.
Well, I just want to go back one page, well, actually 2 pages, back to the thief ability section, because I realised that I had missed a wonderful Gygaxism in our reviews. Checking my notes again to pick it up again. In the moving silently section, I just want to read this out.
Go for it, yeah.
Silent movement is the same as normal exploratory movement, i.e. 12 feet per round, as the thief creeps up, brackets, croodles upon the area or victim or whatever. Croodles!
Oh, look, we don't have a copy of the Monster's Manual to hand. We don't know what a croodle is. What the hell?
It's a 3-hit dice goblinoid. It can cast visibility and dancing lights 3 times per day.
What?
I just couldn't let that one pass, because it's just like...
I wonder, did he have a word of the day calendar to hand? The hell does croodles mean? I'm gonna look up croodles now.
Creeping up, apparently. Creeping up with someone. You croodle them somehow.
I'm taking Gygax at his word here.
There was also one other thing, which was... we sort of skimmed over it because we were at the end of our tether the last time, having gone an epic 13 pages in. There was college majoring in assassination and the massive college fees involved.
No, so we're not done with croodle. Okay, so Merriam-Webster says it is... It's a word. To make a low murmuring sound, or to huddle together as from cold, or to cower or crouch. Okay.
Okay.
There you go, folks. Never say you didn't learn it when you listen to the Adventuring Party. Right, go on. Fees, yes?
Even for an assassin to be able to use a poison, they need to spend many weeks under the tutelage of a mentor, costing 2,000 to 8,000 gold pieces per week to teach them the ways of poisoning.
Gonna need some serious adventuring money to cover those costs.
Yeah, this is like you need to find this 12th level NPC assassin who will basically put them through this wonderful course of, and there's variable lengths. Like, each way to use poison requires 5 to 8 weeks to learn. So after 20 to 32 weeks of study, the assassin will have complete knowledge of 90% of all poisons, as opposed to 90% knowledge of all of complete poisons. And only then will they be able to basically make their own poison. So, like, apparently the subclass of assassin in first edition had to save up all their assassination money for this up to 250,000 gold pieces tutelage in their basic class ability to poison people.
And even then it's just hit point damage, right? It's like...
Yeah, and even then it's just hit point damage, so...
Okay, this seems fine. 250,000 gold pieces to perhaps maybe give some of it Dicky Tommy.
This will not be the last time this book has things to say about academic learning and the costs thereof. But yes, we were going to power on into the monster as player character.
And this takes up the page. This takes up the page, and it is talking about playing something other than a regular one head, two arms, two legs sort of human.
I'm trying to find this particular quote that just struck out to me as worrisome in its assumptions. Oh, there it is. It's actually in the second paragraph. So, advanced D&D is unquestionably humanocentric, quotation marks, with demi-humans, semi-humans, and humanoids in various orbits around the sun of humanity.
He's not wrong. I mean...
he's not wrong, but also he's the one who made it that way, so...
Well, then he can't be wrong. He made it that way. Made up world. There's a reason they're called demi-human. They're less than human. They're not quite human. They're not as good as being a human. They have different stats and different bonuses and penalties. That's humanity's great strength, really. Kind of average. No real standouts, mechanically speaking. Yeah, it's I wouldn't read it in a modern framework or sort of lens.
But he felt the need to make this 2/3 of a page dedicated to how humans are really, really important, and how if you want to play monsters as a PC, you're a little bit weird, but okay, sure, whatever.
Well, it's classic Gygax. He starts in on what is essentially a section that deals with some element a Dungeon Master might need to deal with a bit of highfalutin COD philosophy, and then gets down to some of the nitty-gritty and some definite takes. The game features humankind for a reason. It's the most logical basis in an illogical game. There you go. You're not wrong, Gary.
Well, I was going to read this fourth paragraph. By having a basis to work from and a well-developed body of work to draw upon, at least part of the task is handled for us. When history, folklore, myth, fable, and fiction can be incorporated or used as reference for the campaign, the magnitude of the effort required is reduced by several degrees. Even actual sciences can be used: geography, chemistry, physics, and so forth. Alien viewpoints can be found, of course, but not in quantity, and often not much in quality either. Those works which do not feature mankind in a central role are uncommon. Those which do not deal with men at all are scarce indeed. To attempt to utilise any such bases as the central, let alone sole theme for a campaign milieu is destined to be shallow, incomplete, and totally unsatisfying for all parties concerned, unless the creator is a Renaissance man and all-around universal genius with a decade or two to prepare the game and milieu. Even then, how could such an effort rival one which borrows from the talents of genius and imaginative thinking which come to us from literature?
I kind of have to go with Gary here. Name all the wildly popular RPG systems where you play as a non-humanoid. There you go, and we're done. It's no good saying that. The jellyfish sort of collectives would be just as entertaining a milieu to play in as a sort of something close to base humanity. But the reality is that your players are just going to go. I walk up to the door. You float up to the door on etheric tides. Okay, I grab the door handle. You manipulate the door handle with one of your many tendrils. Gary, can we just play D&D now? Yeah, okay. It's, we can imagine so much, but usually we imagine ourselves.
My point is not that the practice is wrong. It is that I would beware of philosophy which puts the desire to be a particular character and stand out as being something weird. Now, to be fair, if someone wants to play a troll because they want to be immortal and regenerate and stuff, that's a different thing. If you want to put humanocentrism on a pedestal, then I don't know if you should have put in all the elves and gnomes that you have.
But he's wrapping those in. You know, they're kind of inside that envelope. It's when you get outside the...
No, demi-human means elf. Like, demi-humans are elves and dwarves. They're...
Yes, and it's humanocentric. It doesn't say that they don't exist. It's just that they orbit. And they orbit so closely because they're basically derivatives. Pointy ears or beard and or short. Like, that's not a far-flung step away. His argument here is that if you want to play a basilisk, it's like, well, more power to you, but don't expect a lot of help from me.
I spotted, like, with a bunch of quotes I wanted to pull out for this, but maybe we're spending too long on this one page, I think.
One of those for the listener to consider on their own time.
There was something about restriction and not refusal, which was not popping out to me now.
Well, let's kind of wrap with the final paragraph here, where he draws a line under it himself. So, last paragraph of that page, that section. So you are virtually on your own with regard to monsters as player characters. You have advice as to why they are not featured, why no details of monster character classes are given herein. The rest is up to you, for when all is said and done, it is your world, and your players must live in it with their characters. Be good to yourself as well as them, and everyone concerned will benefit from a well-conceived, well-ordered, fairly judged campaign built upon the best of imaginative and creative thinking. Here. You could probably end the book with that. Right, so that moves us on to... And that, I mean, in fairness, that does at least pertain to character creation, which is, in some sense, where we are. Next section. That most pressing concern of all people when they first make a character. Are you secretly a werewolf? Lycanthropy.
Yeah, like, it flows from the previous page, but the idea that we need to dedicate even more time to dealing with the issues of lycanthropy than we need to the entire concept of I would like to play one of the blind goblin men from the cave. Yet, for all of its in-depth stuff for this, I feel like this page can be very quickly summarized as the player does not get to control their werewolf form.
Yeah, I mean, he gives some stuff on insanity, and there's even a table or two dealing with waxing and waning moons. Of course there is. Note to Gary. Gary, the moon will be in whatever stage the Dungeon Master needs to be for dramatic effect. Percentages be damned.
What I really love is the idea that despite going crazy once a month, apparently there's rules for a werewolf that lasts 5 full years as a player character.
Would not want to settle this storyline too quickly. And, of course, it is here in the character creation section, so hoping for a good outcome.
There's also a page for how much it hurts to burst out of different kinds of armor when you wolf up.
Yeah. Love it. That's going to get expensive. You thought Assassin's School was bad. Man, once a month, I bust out of my leather armor. Cost me a fortune. Into whatever your wear form is.
There was one thing I wanted to point out, is that there's this assumption that basically all clerics know the turn back from being a werewolf ritual, and just go to your nearest cleric and they will
sort you out. Yeah,
they are your best hope. And I find that interesting as a sort of default place to go to. In the same way, I also find it interesting that clerics have turn undead, but they don't have turn demons. It's this weird piece of assumed go to a cleric and get sort out their gameplay that I don't know. It tickles a piece of my brain just to know that there's your player character clerics who are on a mission from God to go into this hole in the ground and kill some goblins, and then there's other clerics whose job is to wait for people to come out of holes in the ground with loads of curses and dead people and take all their money away from them. It's an interesting assumption, I guess.
But there's some good stuff on were creatures there, but I guess it's more kind of, in some ways, more ideas for the GM, what to do with them. So that pushes, as you say, it's like largely you lose control. If it's a player character, they lose control. If it's a NPC, then you can kind of get something out of this section. But yeah, as you say, it's mostly hand and the character of the GM until the moon goes down. So that takes us to big cornerstone of the system, at least back in the day, alignment.
Alignment describes the broad ethos of thinking, reasoning creatures, those unintelligent sorts being placed within the neutral area because they are totally uncaring. Note that alignment does not necessarily dictate religious persuasion, although many religious beliefs will dictate alignment. As explained under aligned languages, see later, this aspect of alignment is not the major consideration. The overall behaviour of the character or creature is delineated by alignment, or, in the case of player characters, behaviour determines actual alignment. Therefore, besides defining the general tendencies of creatures, it also groups creatures into mutually acceptable, or at least non-hostile divisions. This is not to say that groups of similarly aligned creatures cannot be opposed, or even mortal enemies. Two nations, for example, with rulers of lawful good alignment can be at war. Bands of orcs can hate each other, but the former would probably possibly cease their war to oppose a massive invasion of orcs, just as the latter would make common cause against the lawful good men. Thus, alignment determines the worldview of creatures and helps define what their actions, reactions, and purposes will be. It likewise causes a player character to choose an ethos which is appropriate to his or her profession and alignment. Which is appropriate to his or her profession, and alignment also aids players in the definition and role approach of their respective game personae. With the usefulness of alignment thus determined, definition of divisions becomes necessary.
And divisions there are aplenty. Has any aspect of D&D split people or been more memed on in all the history of the game? Alignment sort of, I mean, to its credit, it has seeped out into the zeitgeist. You'll find alignment charts for all sorts of, characters and TV shows and you name it, really. Someone's put together an alignment chart for it. But, yeah.
But I just like the finality of that last line. Like that paragraph has explained everything. We don't need to worry about some more. Let's just get on to subdividing what I just said into nine cool subsections, so that we can argue over those instead of over the entire purpose of the whole procedure.
Well, he probably maybe wrote another few pages on the merits and flaws of sort of a moral determinism, and then it's had to be scrapped for space.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to go into the definitions too deeply, but there's a subsection which explains there's no such thing as lawful chaos or evil good. These and their reverses are dichotomous. That is not to say that they cannot exist in the same character or creature if it is insane or controlled by some entity, but as general divisions, these are mutually exclusive pairs.
Worth noting that at no point did anyone see fit to actually create the alignment chart that shows the grid of 9, as it were. That's not here. That comes later.
Yeah, that's just have a list. 9 paragraphs is far better.
Yeah, it just definitely shows the relationship so much better. Okay.
Little note on neutrality. There's a little section on neutrality, and which finishes with, this alignment is the narrowest in scope, implying that no one is really actually true neutral. That's silly.
Why'd you put it in the middle of your chart, Gary? That doesn't exist, Gary. It also gets the most screen time in this. It's like its section is twice as long as anyone else's.
Yeah, it's much. Apparently, all the other ones are self-explanatory. Everybody knows the difference between neutral good, and chaotic evil is. We don't need to worry about too much.
I'm actually most arrested with this, because if you don't use a grid, then you're left with these 8 points on a compass? I don't know.
Well, that's how it works in Planescape. There's a section on lawful good, which is like, they are convinced that order and law are absolutely necessary to assure good, and that good is best defined as whatever brings the most benefit to the greater number of decent thinking creatures and the least woe to the rest.
It's a universalism.
A little bit. Got your lawful good Tau there.
The most good for the most possible people. Yeah. I mean, if we get a philosophy major in here, they'll probably rattle these all off and go, yeah, that's Kant, yeah, that's Hegel, blah blah blah. We're done here. Bye bye. No, we never really figured this bit out. Off we go. If someone has a good answer and can come up with a rule system for it, even better. Alignment, philosophy, moral good, whew, heady stuff. An ethics book, this is not. Followed with a picture, one of the few pictures with a caption of some ne'er-do-wells doing each other over, and there is no honour among thieves.
Just after the chaotic evil section, which
it's the typical player party aftermath. Oh, we found a bunch of gold. Okay, then the real fight starts. Maybe the real adventure isn't the creatures we kill along the way, but what happens between the party once we actually get rich. How many of us are like, I need you to carry this stuff out of the dungeon, but I don't need you to spend it.
Yeah, there's this interesting sub feeling between these definitions that Gary sort of defines evil as sort of a combination of having purpose and a sense of superiority. This is like, if you're just like doing bad things, the impression is I get is that just doing the bad things for their own sake isn't something he really considers the Lime Tart for. If you're doing that, you're just sort of crazy. If you're evil, it means that you have a reason or a purpose that for which you will do evil, and also that you feel that you are more entitled to do the evil than.
That would broadly fall in line with what most first-year philosophy books would tell you. Like that. Like you don't go out in the world and find people who describe themselves as evil, and they always have to their mind at least, a good reason for what they're doing. That's typical.
Like, are we going to just keep, every time we go to the section, we're just going to keep going back to first year philosophy?
I wouldn't grace it with any more than that. It is a few hundred words. You're not going to find the entirety of the human experience there. Now, I must note that later on he does talk about graphing the alignments. Like, look, perhaps it isn't in this set of rules, but I mean, we all know that the alignment aspect of D&D has waxed and waned over the years. Sometimes being brought sharply to the forefront, and in more recent history probably hand-waved a little bit, because it's complicated. It's the true answer.
It's complicated, but also its value has not been pushed forward. Like, Gary seemed to have this idea that just the fact that you had an alignment meant that you sort of had an inherent connection with other people of the same alignment. That if there was like 2 or 3 chaotic groups together, that they would have some sort of general common cause, and that would be able to create alliances between players and factions, and would serve as a justification for different groups of monsters in the dungeon, or which the hobgoblins are there with the orcs, but the hobgoblins are a little bit lawful, so that means that if there's a lawful player, they might be able. There was this sort of idea of that, but it sort of crumbled in the face of GMs making it up on the fly, and thus what could have been a useful tool for sort of placing different groups in in a sort of philosophical context, which with connections to all the great powers of the planes and the demons and the angels and such, sort of just got eroded away by, I have an idea, I think these goblins love these orcs for reasons in my setting, so I don't need the alignment to tell me that they don't get along.
Yeah, I mean, he does address the fact that two aligned kind of factions might still be at loggerheads there in that first paragraph, so it's not cut and dried. I mean, I think we arrive at the same conclusion that anyone who's ever read alignment rules arrives at. Without a strong link to the mechanics of the game, they're more hindrance than help.
Which sort of leads into the next section, which is, I think, a very interesting quirk of those things, is the alignment language. And this concept that in the same way that all Roman Catholics knew Latin, according to Gygax, everyone of a certain alignment will know the secret alignment tongue of their alignment and use this to sort of as a little limited code.
To have alignment talk so the other alignments can't hear them. It's wild clubhouse stuff. It's something along the line of Masonic lodges.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It reads more Masonic than Latin to me, particularly since as people growing up in a Roman Catholic country, we're very much aware that no, Catholics didn't know Latin. Like most of our grandparents went to church and listened to the priest talk in a language they had no idea and did not understand. Went up for communion, went back down, listened for another half hour, and then left, having no idea what was just said. So the concept of this, I forget which particular.
I never thought we'd be discussing Vatican II during this. Yeah.
Well, it was the 70s. Vatican II was sort of a new thing at the time. So, but yes, it is interesting to see this. I believe he was a Jehovah's Witness. With his advanced ideas on how language and personality, translated back into the medieval world.
Wait, Gary Gygax was Jehovah's Witness?
I think some denomination along those lines. I cannot remember exactly.
We're going to get corrected on this one. Okay, well, I think we just have to accept that. we're going to get a letter. Right, where are we? So alignment language.
The problem, and the following paragraph, the following section will sort of enhance this, is that it becomes the concept of the alignment language in itself is salvageable, but it takes place in the context of our modern day where, when I described this, when I went through this with a few people, I think, and...
Well, do you want to outline it first, for those who aren't reading along at home?
Okay, so there's a concept of you're sort of brought up in your alignment, like your faction is considered to have alignment, and that's probably what your...
I'm getting a headache, go on.
Yeah, the assumption is you're going to be brought up in a certain alignment, much like a religion, even though earlier you said it wasn't quite a religion. And that means that you're going to know this alignment language, of which there are 9. So chaotic neutral is not the same alignment language as chaotic evil, for some reason. And you're going to be able to limited contact with people of the same alignment, like you like a secret thief's code or Masonic thing. But also very clearly states that you're not supposed to speak your alignment language in public because that is a taboo. Doesn't really say why it's a taboo, but it is. So if you're planning to use it as a sort of secret code to discover others of your alignment in the enemy city, you're probably just going to get yourself in trouble, because despite the fact that no one who's chaotic evil knows what lawful neutral sounds like, they will know that you're using an alignment language that's not theirs, and they will presumably crack down on that.
So, okay. Yeah. So, only other... And bear in mind, you could be meeting someone from a different plane of reality, but you're going to have this common set of words and gestures and symbols and grunts that correspond to your alignment, whatever it might be. You never use it in public, around people you're not sure about, and it's only really useful for discussing the precepts of the alignment in detail. So you can't really have a conversation about the price of bread in this alignment language. What is this, Gary? What are you doing? What do you intend to happen here, Gary? What's this for?
Yeah, that's sort of the question. Is this like he seems to be setting up this sort of secret religious, like, or it's either this sort of mystic connection between the alignments, or it's a secret factional language system. But then he goes out of his way to specify that you can't really use it effectively as sort of a resistance movement style secret thing. At best, you can use it as like this secret lodge thing, or like, the players have disguised themselves as cultists, but then the cultists start asking questions of chaotic evil, and they don't know that. They've been found out. Again, the utility has not been explained, along with the limitations of the system has been explained, but the utility has not. And, well, that's a lot of this book, isn't it?
This is nuts. This is completely nuts.
It is nuts. But, like, it's this particular kind of nuts that implies better versions of this. And that's what I think is interesting. Is it's like...
Maybe, yeah, I guess. I mean, but he's starting from the basis that there are better versions of this in the real world, like Thieves' Cant or the use of Latin between scholars and clergy in medieval Europe to cross national boundaries, etc. But those are good logical examples of how you might do something like that. What he's proposing here is secret languages that you can only speak to people who you're dead sure also are of the same moral philosophy, and then you shouldn't use them you really can't use them for anything except discussing that outlook on life, and better not be caught out in public saying any of those things because other people will give you the cold shoulder for reasons. It's like there's no game use for this, is there? Not
as written, I don't think.
It's mad. And I'm kind of bored of it now. Gary, you're wasting my time.
Well, it sort of comes up again in the next section, which is the changing alignment section.
Okay. Yeah. No. Maybe I'm not okay. I don't know. A certain amount of self-care would be required after this. Go on.
Well, that's the year and I've had us for.
That's it, yeah. I've aligned myself to beer.
Yes. The one universal constant. Yeah, so this is where a very weird hammer gets dropped. First off, when I described this paragraph to people, they seem confused, like the idea that Gary Gygax had never heard of the term character development before. Because to Gary's mind, once you got beyond level 3, apparently your alignment was such a big deal that the gods will punish you for changing alignment by taking away some of those levels that you had unknowingly dedicated to the forces of good, evil, law, and chaos. And it's an interesting counterpoint to everything he was saying, is that we have the situation where he's dedicated like 2 pages at this point to explaining alignment to us. But as we said, he dismisses the idea that that the usefulness of alignment has already been determined at the end of the first paragraph, and thus we're just now being thrown all these definitions and now harsh penalties for interacting with the system. But where's the usefulness, Gary? You said the usefulness of alignment had been determined. Where is it?
Yeah, it was just so basically useful we had to have it, and don't worry about that. And also, when we get to change alignment, he lays another stunner. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter if you don't profess any belief in a deity. You're definitely working for one of them based on what your alignment is. We'll sort of randomly pick one from the pool that falls in the same slot. And they're going to be real pissed at you when you change alignment. So is alignment a choice or sort of a factor of a creature's nature? Or what is it?
There's a line somewhere where he says, It is assumed that a character's alignment has been his for years. Which is, I don't know, it reads, well, honestly, I would always suspect that it reads like Gary Gygax was sick of players who are changing alignment every 3 sessions because they wanted to play in all the factions with all the games. It's like, what do you mean I can't play with Jerry's Paladin? I'm going to switch to Lawful Good right now.
Do you instantly learn the Lawful Good alignment language?
No, there's actually one of the sections here is that you will not be able to converse in your former alignment language, nor will anything but the rudest signaling be possible in the new alignment language.
That's all right. It's not you can't use it to talk about anything anyways.
But it's the idea that you magically forget.
Yeah, this is wild.
The old alignment language, but now you have to apparently learn the new alignment language from a bunch of swear words that you heard orcs saying it once. That's how you learn your alignment languages, apparently.
And of course, this could be an involuntary change as well. In which case, you learn a little forgiveness.
That I don't even think. Yeah, I think it's basically saying that it's slightly cheaper to get a cleric to cast atonement on you if you was an involuntary change, but if it was a voluntary change, then there's all kinds of promises of the gods that are required.
This has settled this in my mind now. Alignment is... I've been kind of soft on alignment before, but as written, as presented in the first edition book, alignment is a complete and utter albatross, and your game is better off without it.
The way this is written keeps implying a better system to me, but the stuff that's actually written down in the book is basically useless. I don't think that the concept alignment is unsavable, but these rules are.
Yeah, this is awful. I still haven't hit upon one useful thing to do with it, except penalise players at every opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, you know I'm in favour of that, but this is arbitrary beyond even my tastes.
Yeah.
Right.
But speaking of ways to penalise players, we now get to money.
As if death wasn't good enough, now there's taxes.
Death, philosophy, now taxes.
Right, so money. How much... So, because this character creation section, ostensibly. Is it still? Is it? No, maybe it isn't. But it starts with how player characters start out with money. How much they get. Does it say how much they get? No, that's dealt with in the player's handbook. But you can sort of vary that a little bit. But really, the meat of this starts with expenses. It costs a lot to...
Hold on a second. Here's a shocker. This is your 1970s economy for you. Each player character will automatically expend not less than 100 gold pieces per level of experience per month. This is simply support, upkeep, equipment, and entertainment expense. So
I can see that. And I'll give you a good reason as well, because generally when you've got a few levels under your belt, you don't have silvers and coppers in your pouch anymore. So you just and places you go don't generally have a lot of change. You just end up paying for everything gold in, multiples of gold pieces, because that's what you've got. And, you spent 3 days in the dark being hunted by things. So you're at that point, the bit of cheesecake, 5 gold pieces, no problem. Give it to me, man. I don't care.
I know, it's just, I like the idea that, your first level, he was a farmer 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Will suddenly have this billionaire's celebrity lifestyle as they, drag 100 gold pieces out of the dungeon and immediately spend it on drugs and onlookers. It's also the word automatically spent. There's no assumption of we are honorable druids, we shall sleep in the forest. That's not even an option according to this.
Check out my gold-plated antler helmet. Oh yeah, this druid be blinging, baby. Yeah, look, if you're the sort of soul who'll go adventuring, you're probably not stuffing your 401k after a couple of dungeons. You're like, what can I buy now? I'm gonna buy a tavern.
I would largely agree, but it's. I can see why people might object to that. Like you see a modern game like Blades in the Dark, where it sets up very quickly that you are a desperate soul in a desperate situation, and you need big expensive things to placate the mass amounts of stress you're under, and has a whole system to deal with that. But you're a starting RGM and you have these weird monk-like aesthetics who claim that they can sleep on solid rock for 8 hours every night without any problem. And you tell them, well, now you guys are level 3, so you need to spend 300 gold pieces this month on stuff. They're like, no, I don't. My character does...
Maybe they're spending it on their monastery. Maybe they're sending it home to grandma.
That's a perfectly fine... That is fine, but first off, I think that this should probably be in the player's handbook. So much of this stuff, it's just saying, this is your lifestyle. In 5th Ed, you have lifestyle as a choice. You can say, I live in a hole in the ground, I spend a couple of coppers a month, or I live in a palace, I spend hundreds of gold a month. these are options, whereas here it's just assumed it is based entirely on your level. And I get that. I get it as a GM tool to, keep them lean, get them, start taking off a bit of their bank balance to say, oh, your bank balance looking low, better go to those lost caverns of Socanth. Yeah, you definitely need to put the work in. That's fine, but feels like something that could do with a little bit of tweaking or more justification on the player side.
Actually, he mentions monks, doesn't he? Such expense is justified by the fact that adventurers are a freewheeling and high-living lot, except, of course, for monks. But he doesn't bother to give us an alternative for monks. Like, no, they just buy even bigger prayer beads. That's just the way it goes. That's how they end up having all those really big prayer beads. It doesn't scale linearly.
108 perfectly matched prayer beads.
Yeah, that's going to cost. Alright, so...
Then there's this very weird, almost a page worth. Actually, there's more than a page worth. Oh, wait, no, it's like a page and a half. I forgot. Gems. There's all these gem rolling systems. And again, there's nearly 2 pages of this. In a book that had, a paragraph to spend on the address for the offices or a half a page on how to roll up character stats. There is 2 pages dedicated to charts for types of gems, a random chart to see if the gem is apparently 100 times more expensive than another gem of its type, which can go up to maximums of 1 million gold pieces for one gem if some horrific fluke of the dice goes. A separate chart for jewelry, with another doubling system to make absolutely ridiculous maximum of 640,000 gold piece jewels.
I don't know, man. This
is not the treasure chapter, by the way. The treasure chapter is 100 pages on from here.
But if we're talking about money, I'm going to break ranks here and say this is really useful, or this is justifiable. Any veteran adventurer knows that you'll wade through an acre of gold coins to get to them shiny rocks. They're much easier to transport, and they are good everywhere. You take a bunch of King's Head crowns, or dragons, whatever they're called, out of Waterdeep and travel 50 miles down the coast. You're going to have trouble getting value. You take an agate and some obsidian, and maybe a good quartz, and it buys you exactly the same 1,000 miles away as it does on the Sword Coast. So a little bit of time spent on making the gem trove kind of unique and interesting and memorable is justifiable. So yeah, a few good charts here.
I don't suggest that there shouldn't be anything like this. Something like this, even a page would be fine. But I feel it should be in the treasure chapter, not the starting money chapter.
Fair.
And also the fact that there's this random chance for even a random gem you find at level 1 to have 20 times
be the worth of a kingdom. Yeah.
Well, that has very interesting effects on a system where gold piece value turns directly into XP. So if you're going to leave the possibility for a first level party to find a 200,000 gold piece amulet, trade it in somehow, and go shoot straight to level 7 or whatever. That's an interesting choice. The second thing is are you really going to make people go fishing every single random gem that you found to say, make you roll this dice to see, oh, is this one going to roll 17 ones in a row?
That sounds like downtime homework. But yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be here. Is this still something to do with character creation? I know we get onto armor and stuff. Not really. Now, I would note there's a great little section here at the end about the reputed magical properties of gems, which is a cool idea. It's you get hold of a carbuncle. Yeah, get hold of a carbuncle. You've got the powers of dragon sight, or you can ward off drunkenness with something else, with an amethyst. That's cool. Any GM worth the salt is going to read that and go, huh. And not to mention, now you've got it's the Irish problem. Give an Irishman a potato, eat it now, or ferment it into poaching. With a gem, do you spend it now, or do you hold on to it so that you can use that onyx to cause discord among enemies, or that lapis lazuli for raising morale? I like that. It's a lot of fun.
It's a really cool idea, but it is only just flavor. It doesn't have any mechanical backup. It's sort of this reference chart where you make up a magic item, and then you have to go to this chart reference to see what gems will probably be inside.
That's mechanical. Like, if you give me... if I've got a star sapphire that gives me protection from magic, I'm like, yeah, okay, that I can apply a mechanic really quickly. Here you go, you take, half damage, or you've got +1 to saving throw against wands. I think players, though, will look at this and go, right, gotta start crushing them gems and snorting them. That's so it's a good starting point. You could go all sorts of places with it.
Yeah, this is a nice spark table for stirring the imagination, but it doesn't.
I think that's like if I saw that in any sword and sorcery book now, I'd be like, that's a cool idea. I can start with this. Yeah, it could be totally fleshed out. There's lots more to do with it. Like, how much does it ward off spells? Does a more valuable one ward off bigger spells? But it's like, oh man, you kind of see where Thanos was so interested in all those Infinity Stones. Like, you get the really flawless ones, and you power to rule the universe.
Yeah, apparently so.
Anyway, here it is, stuck down the back of a money section, not in the treasure chapter. In this book, this kaleidoscopic book. Right, so obviously that naturally leads
the other rare commodities with prices for every type of, well, not every type of fur, but all the big types of fur. What's the difference between seal skin and muskrat fur? How much does Cruella de Vil's jacket really cost?
Right. Yes. I mean, that flows from gems, I suppose. What it flows into, of course, is the next section that'll pop into any right-thinking person's mind, which is armor class, and weapons.
Are we not going to talk about how things are measured in drams, scruples, and gills?
I measure most of my drinks in half gill, which is the equivalent of a double these days, just in case anyone's keeping track.
Well, that's good to know. But yes, you can get D4 silver pieces for every scruple of rare spice you find. That's what they mean when they say get your scruples around you.
Square yards. Yeah, a dram. What is a dram? It's like, dram's a really small measure. It's
what you measure perfume in.
It's some subsection of a fluid ounce, I think. Probably not as much as a gill. Yeah, dram. It's often you'd hear dram used in terms of spirits, drinks. Yeah. And of course we measure incense, but the stick, how thick is the stick? Depends. Right. That's yeah. It's old worldy measurement stuff that I'm sure if you've been on the.
Which really interests me because on the next section we have this chart where how bulky is bandit armor. It's bulky, whereas chain is fairly bulky and leather is non-bulky.
But all in terms of bulk.
And then, but also as well as the bulk, there is the actual exact measurement of how much it weighs in pounds and how much it affects your movement.
That's fair. That's quite nuanced in a sense, because while padded gambeson isn't going to be as heavy as mail or as ring mail, it's certainly a lot bulkier. It does not convey that svelte silhouette.
But they're both fairly bulky, according to this.
Sure, but they weigh different amounts. My more general point is that Gary's, at least having hung around the Ren Fair crowd, recognizes that some types of armor can be heavy without being bulky, and vice versa. Like if you wrap yourself in straw, you're not going to weigh much, but as bulky as all get out.
But there is a traditional breakdown of all the different types of armor. I'm pretty sure there is like you go to some of the modern HEMA people, they will just rant and rave about how half these things don't actually exist.
That's not a thing. Yeah, that does exist. That's never been a thing. Studded leather armor. That comes up often. Like, this isn't something you'd wear. Who the hell wants studs driven into their body with a hammer? Because that's what happens. Although, interestingly enough, the giant ground sloth of northern Indo-European sort of area during the last ice age did have studs of bone embedded in its skin. Evolution and history in the paleontological record does not record why. They dug burrows as well, so who knows? I mean, they're extinct now, and I think there's a good reason for that. Moving on.
There's a few random pieces of quirk here, like the fact that all magic armor is automatically lighter. That elfin chain, yeah, of course, elfin chain's always going to be the best.
Yeah, non-bulky, 15 pounds weight, and you keep your full base movement.
It is obtainable only from elven kind who do not sell it.
Studded leather, actually, the description is kind of interesting, is leather armor to which have been fastened metal studdings as additional protection, usually including an outer coat of fairly close-set studs, i.e. small plates. So you could imagine something more like scale mail, but without the intricate sort of underlying structure. It's poor man's scale mail, really. In fact, what it doesn't give here are how these armors actually perform. There's no AC attached to any of these. What's going on?
The ACs are listed in the player's handbook, presumably. So partly this is just sort of an extra thing added on. Again, it's not clear why we need this. Maybe just to have room in the PHP for the for the half page of extra discussion. There's a weird section in the plate mail description which implies that this is actually literally just mail with some extra plates, and that there is something else called field plate, which is actual plate armor as we would know it today. Yeah, but the next page is all kinds of weird exceptions. Like, there's a sort of implication. There's a section on helmet, which is A, extremely harsh if you don't have a helmet, and B, implies that even if you're like a wizard covered in all kinds of magical protections, if you don't have a helmet on, you're just AC 10 anyway, because everyone automatically goes for the head, which, despite being a meme in 2018, is not quite. I get, dungeons are hard, wear a helmet is fine advice, but it is an interesting sort of comparison to the modern, I believe, dungeon punk is what people call it, where characters are meant to be presented as a personal expression, and so you sort of design your character much like a movie superhero would be, with glowing, flowing blonde locks and winning smile, and then inevitably the realistic combat people will come along and say, "Oh, that nose will get broken in 5 seconds in a real dungeon." It speaks to the idea that back here in first edition, your character is supposed to compromise how they look, what their equipment is, to suit the environment, rather than press themselves onto the environment. Which I guess you could read a bit of philosophy into that, maybe.
That's a lot to take from the helmet section. Okay, but I take your point. More specifically, it's like, what, you get 1 AC if you've got a helmet on. Otherwise, your head is assumed to be AC 10, and 1 in 6 blows will end up there, unless the opponent is intelligent, in which case it'll be every second blow. Okay, that's a neat little addition to all the other bookkeeping that has to be done. Now you've been hit. Let me just figure out if it has hit your head or not. And do we use locations in Dungeons & Dragons? No, but just here we will, because you didn't wear a hat. Do everyone a favour, players, wear a hat. Otherwise your GM's going to spend an awful... Those fights, they were taking a while anyways. We don't want them to take any longer.
And the final thing before we wrap up, I think, is that there's an ominous section called Weapon Types Do Hit Adjustment Note, which feels like it's only one paragraph, and I don't really want to read it out now, but I feel like it is a threat to something we've heard of before, of something called a weapon speed chart,
exactly what I was
which I
thinking.
suspect is lurking somewhere in this book is a very large chart explaining exactly how different every single glaive guy's arm interacts with every single combination of chainmail and helmets.
Weapon speed, yeah, that one gets debated every so often. I guess it's just one of those, it's a nice idea. We're still waiting for someone to come up with a really elegant solution that fits in with all the other really elegant solutions. Problem is, systems can be tough like that. You can have a bunch of elegant solutions that, when put together, are a complete mess. Right, so that takes us to the end of...
We're now in the middle of page 28, and I know what's coming next.
Well, just in case you've been listening along at home, or even reading along, we'll be heading into hirelings next time, because that was a big feature of old D&D. I mean, some of what you were spending all your ill-gotten gains on was, shall we call them ablative party members? They're kind of there to walk into the breach.
That's part of it.
But that's for next time.
Like, it's completely separate from the hirelings you apparently got. It is weird to me that, like, we'll get to this ranting, but, like, don't feel confused that the hireling section is different from the follower section and the later henchman section. That's as designed. You're not going crazy.
Birds of a different feather. Okay, well, we've plucked this duck quite enough. We've pulled feathers out of this. Out of this Pegasus? Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, there's rules for Pegasus and what happens when they lose their feathers later on.
Why am I doing this? What are we doing, Gary? Why are you doing this, Gary? Why is this in here, Gary? I think is going to be... I get a t-shirt. Why is this in here, Gary? My reaction to the first edition DMG. Okay. Well, we have been the Adventuring Party. We are picking apart... We're dungeoneering through the first edition of the Dungeon Master's Guide for Dungeons and Dragons.
Are we level 2 yet?
Oh, we'll get there. We might need a few hirelings before we're out.
We're at this a month. We have expenses that are going to be automatically expended.
Oh man, you're about to come up. We haven't even. Well, hell, we should have taken something from the gems chart where we're passing. Find us on Discord. Check the show notes for links. We're on YouTube as well. We're here and there on the internet. We hope you've enjoyed this. I'd highly encourage you to grab a copy of this book just to see some of the foundations being laid without a lot of site inspection first. But for now, I think it's fair to say that this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike of version 3 license.